With a pretty hefty cost of living crisis and an increase in alcohol tax sales coming soon in the UK, low ABV but very tasty beer might soon be, well, not just nice, but a necessity. And this one might just tick all of the boxes. Hello, Hello and welcome back to the channel. And yes, with everything that's going on in the world right now, some lower strength, slightly, well, cheaper to produce is questionable, but certainly ones that are cheaper from a tax perspective may be a thing that you start to see in the beer trends over the next year. And this one from Lord's Brewing Co., well, kind of unbeknownst to me at the time when I tried it about 3 or 4 months ago, is actually probably going to hit the nail on the head for what needs to be kind of the blueprint for affordable beer going forward. Now, I did start the intro to this very positively, saying this might be kind of the box checker for that style of beer, and that's because I have tried it before. I tried it on cask, I believe. Oh, was it on a keg? No, it was keg line up at Lord's Brewing Co. Kind of probably 3 months ago now, but I've never had it in a bottle, and I'm very interested to see how this translates. On their website right now, this is a mere £3 a bottle, even cheaper if you buy it in bulk. So by today's standards, and it's a 500ml bottle, that's, yeah, pretty damn cheap. So full disclosure, I am friends with John, who runs Lord's Brewing Co. I am generally speaking positive about his beers, but I'm also not afraid to tell him when he's got it wrong. It's just too citrus and orange forward, I think, for the style. There's probably a clip going on here about a certain orange and chocolate stout that he made. But anyway, this is a different story, and I very much enjoyed it at the time. It is very different, and I'm going to try my best to explain it to you right now because, well, I think I'd probably had a few too many beers to properly appreciate it the first time I tried it. What is it? Well, it's called Moggie Rye PA. The clue's in the name. It's meant to be an IPA, but it's also well, rye, but it's not really an IPA because it's a mere 3.6%. Yeah, 3.6%. So it's properly sessionable stuff, but it's a rye pale ale anyway. Moggie, well, as far as I can tell, Moggie is just a reference. Here's a quick look at the bottle to the car. That is a Morgan. Aeromax, I believe. John's very into his cars, and they end up on the labels quite a lot. Not sure it has anything distinctly to do with the rye element of this beer, but that's the bit that I'm particularly interested in, given how, well, rye in whiskey affects the flavour a lot, and I'm expecting it to do so in this. But I think it has a bit of a different effect, so I suppose we need to find out. So yeah, pretty standard Lord's kind of bottle label. These are hand bottled and bottle conditioned beers, so need to be a little bit careful on the pour, but yeah, nice looking stuff. And you know what, it's an evening, it's quite warm, I'm thirsty, let's get it open. I do have a Lord's Brewing Co. glass. It has got the percolator in the bottom, so it might not be perfect, but I feel like doing it. I'll probably regret this shortly, but let's find out. Given that, we're going to go for a very careful pour. And because it's bottle conditioned, we don't want to have to do a double pour either, so slow it right down. As I suspected, it's a little bit chaotic. Beer is flowing over the glass at this point. It's gone fairly wrong. That's a crummy pour and a half. Kind of stick a flake in that if you won't mind. Okay, I've cleaned up and got it somewhat under control. Just as a word of warning, if you're ever considering putting something that doesn't belong in a lager glass just don't do what I do and repeatedly do it hoping for a different result, because that is the definition of madness. But hey ho, it is what it is. So the aroma on this beer, well, actually, firstly the visual, now it's under control. It's a beautifully rich gold colour. It looks a little bit red on camera. In front of the light though, it's kind of proper gold, deep, almost orange hued beer. Slightly, it's a bit cliche to say, but it is an off-white head. It's almost white, but there is just a little hint of something else going on there. It's very carbonated. It is still absolutely going. Aroma wise, there's like a citrus peel perfuminess to this beer that I think is reminiscent of a lot of hopped pales, but it's because of the clear kind of depth of the malt, given the colour and everything else, and presumably as well to some addition, that addition of rye, it's really something a little bit different. It's almost kind of like spiced zest, and this is going to sound distinctly pontificating and everything else, but kind of like the floral bit of like fresh peppercorns. That is an abstract saying, don't get me wrong, I kind of hate myself for saying it, but to try and give you an idea, that's what I mean. There's this earthy heat to it, but also distinctly zesty, floral, almost slightly perfumey, to the point that I go, not sure, but then it never gets too much, and it kind of just kind of mellows out into this nice kind of, you know, complex malt character, I think is probably the best way to describe it. There are some darker notes, some kind of almost burnt but not quite caramel and toffee tones, but yeah, it's an interesting aroma beer. And to say that it's 3.6%, did I say? Yeah, 3.6%. The aroma on it makes it feel big. It feels much more of an event, if you like, than the ABV would suggest. So let's give it a try, shall we? Cheers. Every time it tickles your cheeks, you can't help but smile. Even if you don't like it, you can sat like that, and it's a bit awkward. It is a wildly different beer to almost anything else. It's quite soft, sweet and juicy right up front, but then there's huge bitterness and quite yeah, I mean, everything from the nose, really, that kind of earthy, slightly spicy, but very citrusy and fruited note, all kind of come together throughout. It is a distinctly, well, flavorful beer is what I'd say. You're not left going, you know what, the base flavors are nice, but it felt a bit washed out, a bit weak, a bit whatever. This is legit. This has got heaps and heaps of flavor in a low ABV package, which, well, there's not a lot to hate about that, if I'm honest. And that zesty note is so absolutely intense that, well, you could even be kind of fooled into thinking this was like a, you know, like a, I don't want to say a shandy because that's not quite true, but like a bitter lemon top or something like that. It's got this real nice, refreshing thing running throughout it. Perfect summer beer for someone who doesn't want a lager, doesn't want a, I don't want to say a highly hopped beer, because I think this is, but it's not. It doesn't come across as being hopped in the same way. It's not just a fruit bomb. It's not just aggressive lemon and grapefruit or super sweet stone fruits, whatever, or tropical, you know, the list goes on. This is like a bit more... My dogs just went ape someone not being at the door. Apologies. Back to the beer. Yeah, it's kind of this more just considered package, more refined almost than, I guess, the... what now feels like generically hopped IPAs. Sure, years ago they were mind-blowing and incredible, but maybe they've got to the point where they're just too in your face with those distinct fruited notes. This feels a bit more, I say, layered, complex, just kind of executed at the right level almost. And that little bit of residual peppery rye that kind of kicks in towards the back of the mouth, just, it gives in layers something you don't normally see. And I think that is really what the beer world is in need of right now. Not just new things, because what we don't want this is to be a novelty, but, you know, rye does have a distinct kind of set of flavours, and for people who like it, like myself, yeah, big thumbs up for sure. Right then, before I drink all of this because it's too tasty, waffling on about it, quick top to bottom taste test so you can understand exactly what is going on. So initially, as I said, sweet, bit of light carbonation on the front of the tongue, almost a hint of some kind of sweet berry notes, blackcurrant, cherries, no, not cherries, that's wrong, blackcurrant, red currant, just currants is what I mean. But that right up front, kind of summer fruits, summer berries, and then second phase, it's immediately bitter. Like it's not over the top, it's not too much, but there's a distinct bitterness that just clings on straight away. It lets you know that this is not going to be a super supple, smooth, sweet ride. There's going to be some flavours going on right here, right now. And then Mid-palate, it's really where the beer starts to change. You do get a tiny lull in flavour, very normal, most beers do it, but in this one you're kind of getting more juicy fruit, weirdly. It's super soft, super subtle, and it doesn't taste like watermelon, and that's important for me to say before this happens, but you know that kind of really subtle, refreshing, slightly sweet watermelon experience? Well, there's a bit of that going on, I say, right in the middle of the tongue, just before it all switches up, because just as you go, all that sweet, bitterness hits back in, and then that peppery heat, followed by an absolute plethora of quite sharp citrus peel, earthy, kind of, you know, fruited citrus notes. And as you just let it go down, analyse the aftertaste a bit, pretty drying, and you're just left with this kind of sharp, crisp, bitter finish that is hyper clean. Like, it's still there, I can still taste it, but there's no dominant notes. It's almost like a physical mouth experience rather than actually tasting something, if that makes sense. And it just makes you want to go in for another swig where you're left with that same experience. It's one of the few beers where it's really hard to discern what flavours coming from the hop, what flavours coming from the yeast, and what flavours are coming from the malts, because they're all just kind of intertwining to make this singularity thing. And for me, it's the best beers that generally do that. Now, look, it's not the best beer ever. That's not what I'm saying. But as an experiment in something different, going rye heavy, I think it just works. Lords are very, very good at their kind of, I'd say, kind of the hybrid, you know, craft, trad, kind of, they can do cask or keg and put the same beer effectively in both at times, like I think they probably have with this before. And it comes out with, it works both ways, if that makes sense. This works as a colder, you know, craft, rye focused pale ale, and it also works as something a bit different from a trad line, all at the same time. They ride that line very purposefully, very well, and it's just resulted in something that I want another pint of. I would quite happily, you know, take a case of these to a barbecue, buy a case in for summer, because it just works. Right then, quick look at the bottle before we wrap this up. So on the back it says, not all Moggies are miners. I assume that a reference to the Morris miner, perhaps, car themed. Some are hand built and beautifully crafted, like this stunning Aeromax. Just like our beer, a marriage of old and new to make something truly unique. This sessionable rye beer designed to be rich in flavour but not overpowered with rye, then gently dry hopped and double fermented. This bottle beer has been hand filled, secondary fermented, and all the rest of it, which basically means be careful when you're pouring it. And that's really all it says about it. It's vegan friendly. 1.8 UK units in this bottle, which is, well, very refreshing, to be fair. And yeah, it's just a great everyday, turn the bottle the right way, you know, lower ABV, affordable beer from a small brewery. These are hand bottled. This is, you know, small batch stuff. £3 for 500ml. You can't go wrong, honestly. Can't go wrong. Double thumbs up on this one. I really, really like it. I can't remember whether I prefer it in this bottle form or on keg, because it's been a while, but both, yeah, truly fantastic, and strongly recommend you try it if you're into that sort of thing. That's all I've got to say about it. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe, if you'll be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.